There is a deep-seated fear that almost every single person carries within them, often hidden beneath the surface, and that is the fundamental fear of survival, the raw existential fear that defines our human experience. And precisely in our next lunar cycle, starting from August 23rd, it is exactly this profound topic that will be addressed, which will also accompany us and challenge us for the next few years to come. The question of whether we can truly remain calm, centered, and composed internally, even when we are placed under great and overwhelming external pressure. And this very test is added to what some of us are already strongly perceiving by now. The intense energy surges that, yes, are really becoming stronger and stronger, one could say. These waves are also increasingly, in some cases, really knocking us out, leaving many of us feeling quite overwhelmed as we navigate these powerful, shifting currents of energy that seem to be intensifying day by day. So, I am receiving messages about severe headaches, especially in the head and neck area, but also back pain, nerve disorders, fainting spells, nausea, and dizziness. Yes, so there are really severe and concerning symptoms involved here, and because we are noticing all of this happening quite simultaneously, well, we absolutely know that something is going on here. So for those of you experiencing this right now, whether physically, emotionally, or even intuitively, you know deep down that something is currently, yes, in the process of being newly created. And that is a kind of profound knowledge that simply cannot be ignored. I know just a few months ago, I was talking to some of you. Back then it was more like, well, maybe there is just something wrong with me. Maybe I'm sick, seriously, you know? But that's not the case. So now we know it's not the case. The high forces, the great forces, the forces from above, they are, you could also say, finally making themselves felt. So something is really happening here now, and we are just the first ones to notice it. This will continue to go on. More and more people will naturally start to feel it too, depending on how it is set up in their own horoscope. But of course, there are other important factors that also play a significant role here. Yes, and now it is naturally about the fact that since we are already processing these high frequencies here, so to speak, it also means that our own healing process is being activated here as well. That means many of us are healing right now, going through the most difficult phases, traumas. Yes, one is purifying oneself right now, so to speak. And now, as we look ahead to the next month coming up, I'll show you in just a moment. It's all going to start over again with the same fear-mongering and those panic reports, which are quite naturally mixed in with just a little bit of truth. But it will be blown completely out of proportion. And that is exactly the point, that we must not get lost in that now, because then we will really have no energy left at all. Because then we'll be completely wiped out, then nothing will work anymore. So that should really be avoided. And that is exactly what today is about, that we don't lose sight of our goal here, that we notice, we know what's going on here, so there's no need for, any more confirmation, because every one of us who is currently aware of this knows that it's like this without a doubt. And for those who might still be doubting because they don't know what's going on with them, I can reassure you, everything is fine with you. These are intense times. A new era is beginning. You can feel it. And exactly, that's just how it is now, and we all have to get through it. That also means the main topic is transformation, really. It is the dawn of a new era, and it is these intense, high-frequency energies that we now have to process and integrate for about another year or so. Only then, so to speak, will we be truly chosen, or perhaps destined, you could say, to step forward and create this brand new world together. We are, so to speak, the first ones. Exactly. And we naturally have to make sure now that we use this year, that we heal ourselves. And we have to do that because high-frequency energy in its final state, in its purified final state, is incompatible with shadow aspects. That means none of us can avoid working through the difficult issues we still have to deal with right now. And for that to happen, we also have to find a way to get through this month together. and how we get through this month very calmly and very chilled, even if everything around us is collapsing. That's what this video is about now. And for that, we are going to begin by taking a look at the planetary connections and alignments that are actively triggering this cycle, which officially begins on August 23rd. On August 23rd, precisely at the stroke of midnight, the Sun transitions out of the sign of Leo and enters into Virgo, meaning that at this exact moment, the Sun is positioned at exactly 0 degrees within the sign of Virgo. At the same time, there is a harmonious connection, a trine aspect to the Moon in Capricorn, which is also positioned exactly at 0 degrees in Capricorn at the stroke of midnight. This alignment means that on August 23rd, precisely at midnight, we are witnessing a perfect and exact Sun-Moon trine, a notable event in the astrological calendar. And now, let's take a closer look at the current alignment. The Moon is in Capricorn, while the Sun is in Virgo. Yes, these two energies flow together quite excellently, and combined, they really stand for careful, structured planning. It stands for security. It stands for deep analytical thinking, for a sense of responsibility, for rationality, for order, and also for a certain level of seriousness. And that is exactly the point where the wind begins to shift, so to speak. Moving away from the vibrant flair of the August summer, we transition into the security-oriented Virgo with Capricorn as a partner. Yes, these two signs are then naturally and perfectly destined for security. But now let's look even further. Exactly on August 23rd, in addition to this trine, we are also seeing a significant opposition forming with Mars, which is currently positioned in the sign of Pisces. Always on the same day. That means, yes, the feelings, especially everything that one had actually planned in August, the visions, the ideals, everything that has to do with the heart, yes, that has become extremely unimportant for now because security now takes precedence over everything here. So everything else, heart, feelings, play no role on this day, and especially in this month, as far as the ideal is concerned, as far as the good feeling is concerned, as far as confidence is concerned, as far as empathy is concerned. Yes, for now, because this month is now all about survival, about existence. And of course, this will also be quite nicely paired with those shock messages, along with, yes, the unrest, which has been prevailing throughout the whole time anyway. There was a bit of a summer break, now it's starting up again with the shock news. Some of them will, of course, be entirely true, while others will just jump on the bandwagon simply because you can naturally generate a massive amount of attention and make quite a bit of money with that. So the actual truth might only be 10 or 20%, while the other 80% are just vested interests that are nicely creating panic, triggering safety concerns, and playing exactly on people's fears. By the way, oil prices can of course rise again at any moment, because in the end, we are all deeply affected by this unrest everywhere in the world, one could say, because everything is naturally interconnected with our high-frequency energy. Because just as we are currently fighting, or rather, actively eliminating our shadows within, it is because we are truly healing and evolving. The same thing is happening on the outside. The old powers, especially the, yes, not so good powers that are driven by greed, that are driven by power, that are driven by manipulation, that have played on our fears for many years and were naturally able to profit from it, that is now also coming to an end. But they won't just leave like that. They won't just go away like that. Just like our inner issues don't just go away like that either. Because it's not like you can just sit on the couch with a bag of chips just because you feel the high frequency energies and are getting them full blast and think you'll be healed by tomorrow. That's not how it works. And everyone who is experiencing this right now also knows what an intense thing this is. You have to face everything. You have to fight. You have to suffer. You have to endure pain, even the most intense emotional pain. So you have to face everything. And the same thing is happening right now in the outside world, yes. So they don't want to leave either. They will fight to the very end so that they don't have to give up. But they won't be able to win in the end because time is up. So they don't have a chance anyway, but they don't know that yet. And they will try everything to not allow us, those of us who want to ascend, who want to, raise our frequency, so to speak, to do so. Because then they will lack our energy, because we were super consumers for years and exactly, always looked there, believed it many times, and so on and so forth. We know the story. And in addition to that, we have a square here, which is occurring on the very same day, with our Neptune currently positioned in Aries, again in fiery Aries. Neptune, which stands for our ideals, which also plays a major role in our, new age. It will be accompanying us for a long time to come and will keep appearing here again and again. So it is a leading role, one could say. And on the same day, it is also in quadrature with the moon. Exactly. And you have to know that, because this is just the first day. It continues. There are several days again, which I will also write down in the description below, so that you can see exactly the days when the moon activates these fear triggers here. Or also the events that then naturally follow in the outside world. And so that can often go hand in hand with some shocking news. But it's absolute maximum, phenomenal, extreme peak that happens here at the full moon. And that is August the 28th. We are going to take a closer look at that specific date right now as well. Things will certainly really take off here, because we have everything scheduled for August 28th at 8 o'clock in the morning, European time. Now, if you happen to be located in a completely different time zone, then exactly, you would just have to add or subtract those few hours to align with your local time. We currently have the moon in the sign of Pisces. It has moved on from its previous position and is now fully settled in Pisces. And here it forms a direct and powerful opposition to our sun, which has recently moved into Virgo and will be staying there for the duration of this month. At the same time, this creates a significant opposition to our Mercury, which stands for our thoughts, our communication, and the way we process the mind. Right? And they form an opposition here. The sun is also optimally illuminating this here in Virgo. So Mercury is, so to speak, sitting right in its home, and the sun is also positioned in there with it while standing in direct opposition to our moon over in Pisces, right? And this here can really exaggerate everything to the absolute maximum, blowing things way out of proportion. So you can easily find yourself getting carried away into these elaborate delusions simply because the sign of Pisces tends to be incredibly dreamy by its very nature. Yes, so they like to lose their footing on the ground sometimes. That can, have a positive effect, but in such a constellation with potentially matching shocking news, when things really get going again, it's catastrophic because panic can really break out there. And with Mercury involved, things really start going crazy up here. Yes, and you're really caught in a wave of fear then. You get, so to speak, really pulled into it, and that's exactly at 8 o'clock in the morning. And 8 o'clock in the morning also happens to be a square to Uranus in Gemini at the same time. Communication, news, Uranus, shock, suddenly, the sudden, the unexpected. So it would be very possible here at the full moon that some kind of bombshell, from whatever direction it may come, we will follow what the full moon can bring with it. But that can easily happen, be it in the collective, but of course also privately. You also have to look at it privately, of course, what's going on there, what is happening right now. Do I perhaps have fears of loss, security fears in general? With the moon in Pisces, these can be experienced extremely intensely. And there, exactly, that is something you absolutely need to know. Because again, on the same day, a few hours later, our trine to Mars in Cancer also occurs here. And here too, this is also our warrior planet in Cancer, in a trine in combination with a sextile. It can really amplify the whole thing once again. And that's how it continues for other days as well. You can find that they are described below in the table of contents, which clearly outlines exactly which days these are. And at the same time, I also accompany this on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, and on Telegram in English. So on those days, I will make sure to post reminders naturally, either early in the morning or the night before or the evening before, just so that you are fully aware. Because it is important that no matter how much the pressure from the outside world increases or how you yourself might be affected by it, you do not lose yourself in the process. Because that would be counterproductive. We are here together to overcome our fears, to stay calm and to remain steady, come what may. And this is, of course, a test right now. Yes, but I have to ask, how can we really stay calm in these situations? I mean, really, how do we reach a point where we truly don't care about what happens? That is possible, and I'm going to show you how now. Because I have been practicing this myself for many years, and I can assure you ever since I've been proceeding this way, yes, exactly, I am super calm, and it is, yes, a completely different way of existing. And that is exactly what I am going to show you now, how I solved this problem for myself. I am now going to walk you through my own personal emergency crisis plan for basic supplies, which I have been carefully following and observing for many years now, and which has even been put to practical use on more than one occasion before. And in fact, the whole process involves surprisingly very few products. There are exactly 8 essential things in total that you absolutely need to survive comfortably for several months and even up to a full year, though that would require adding a 9th item to the list without suffering any lasting physical damage. This means you wouldn't really be lacking anything significant in the long term that the human body couldn't easily regenerate once things finally calm down again, provided that such a scenario should even be necessary, which, to be honest, I don't really think will ever happen. I believe that it's fundamentally always about fear-mongering, and then, of course, it could happen that for a few days something doesn't work, maybe there's no power, or maybe something is closed, or maybe you can't get into somewhere. Maybe gas prices are also so high that you just can't drive anywhere for a while. I don't know. Of course, one doesn't know. Anything can always happen. But the idea that the entire global supply chain would suddenly stop working for up to a year, I just find that impossible to believe. I really can't imagine that happening. I don't believe that will happen. I believe that if anything, it would be, well, a short period of time, and that is exactly what you are prepared for, so you don't have to worry about such things anymore. So you don't have to watch the news anymore. You don't have to let yourself get panicked, and I would really highly recommend what I'm showing you right now. These are completely normal products that you can get in any supermarket. The whole thing costs less than 50 euros if you choose the budget-friendly option, and that is perfectly sufficient for survival. So you take the cheap option, and if you naturally feel like doing more and maybe having some fun with it, then that's a different matter. But as a basis, you don't need anything more than this. And right, so let's get started. I'll show you the list. I've also prepared a list. By the way, it's also available for download. I'll link it in the description below. So for anyone who wants to read through it again, you can find this list down in the description. This would be the one here in German. Of course, it's also available in English for our, well, non-German speaking viewers. You'll find that linked down below in English. Exactly, but now let's take a look at the German list, which is, of course, identical to the English one. There we have a bag of flour, then we have some vegetable oil, then we have salt, natural seeds, clean drinking water, a warm blanket, and a pack of multivitamin tablets. Honestly, that collection of supplies alone is more than enough to help a normal person survive for quite a while. Now, I'm not talking about someone who is sick or perhaps someone who already has deficiencies. I'm talking about a completely normal, middle-aged person with a normal weight. This is enough to survive for several months. How exactly, I will show you right now. And if you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to get by for up to a full year using only these products, then you would also need to make sure to add a protein powder to your emergency supplies as well. But now let's go through each of these items one by one so I can show you exactly how I handle these products and how I combine them together. What you see here in the picture in this photo, those are wheat grains. I personally always buy them from a local farmer that I truly trust. I also make it a point to know exactly where the wheat grows so I can see it growing in the fields myself. And exactly, I have adopted this specific habit for many years now because, well, quite frankly, it is really optimal for storage. You can simply put it in a sack in the cupboard and you do not have to worry about anything else because these grains are far too hard for insects to get into and for any other, pest infestation to occur here. That usually does not happen, provided it is not damp, of course, and provided the room temperature is kept at a normal, stable level. Exactly, and that is optimal. Of course, you can just as easily buy your flour at the supermarket, and honestly, that is one way I often do it. I used to buy my flour at the supermarket too, but then I would always wrap it up again with cling film just to be sure that no pests could ever get inside. So I would definitely recommend that to you if you get your flour from the supermarket, which is already prepackaged and sitting on the shelf. Otherwise, if you have the opportunity to get flour, wheat, or of course oats, spelt, or whatever tastes best to you directly from a local farmer, then I would really recommend doing that because you're supporting them and their hard work in that way too, which is just a wonderful thing to do for the local community and for the quality of your food. So the local farmer I visited about a month ago to pick up the new wheat harvest informed me that he is doing this for the very last time, at least as far as the commercial industry is concerned. For us small, regular customers who always come by to buy from him, he says he will keep doing it, thank God. But for the big players, the industry at large, he simply won't do it anymore because they only paid him a measly 20 cents per kilo this year. Yeah, and now you can do the math yourself. When he put the sack down for me, it's a 30-kilo sack, he says. €6. I say, excuse me? €6? I say, are you trying to give this to me for free or why €6? No, that's just what the prices are like this year. So, of course, I paid more. Yeah, that really is. I mean, that's just exploitation beyond words. Yeah, you really can't say anything else. And it's also kind of intentional in a way. Yeah, I mean, the prices here are really being driven into the ground on purpose, especially for the farmers. And a documentary also came out recently, I just saw it on YouTube, that shows that in Europe right now, every second farmer is quitting this wheat production simply because it just doesn't pay off for them at all anymore. Yeah, and that's really where I find if you can manage it, then you just drive out a bit and take a look for yourself. And honestly, at those prices, it's basically a gift anyway, even if you were to pay double, triple, or even quadruple the cost, because a sack like that really lasts a surprisingly long time. And what you can actually do with it, well, I'll show you right now. So, first of all, this is exactly what it looks like when you take it out of the sack. Then, I put it into a storage glass container, then I weigh it out, and then I put it into a bowl for myself. Exactly, and after that, brand new, added this year, a grinder. So I just throw it directly into a household mill, which I have at home now, and then the flour comes out already ground for me right here. But you don't necessarily need one. You don't necessarily need it. There are also alternatives. Before, I always used to take the flour to the, what do you call it? It was a miller, I think, in German, because I'm here in Italy, and he ground it for me right there, And I honestly don't know where you are or whether that kind of service still exists where you are. I think back where I lived before in Germany, in the city back then, it was really quite difficult, I think, to find. So I don't even know if something like that existed. Yeah. But it could, of course, be that it's still more traditional here in southern Italy and that such professions are still exactly present. If that's not the case for you, and let's say you don't have a miller available there and you only have this grain on hand, well, don't worry, because you can still get it done. Let's say, for example, you don't have the money for such a mill. Yeah, then there are, for one thing, hand-operated mills. Yeah, so you can get them from about 50 euros. But I can't say for sure now. I haven't tried it. I don't know. I've only seen them on the internet. Or you can also use a mortar. Yeah, you just take a mortar and grind it down in an emergency. Yeah. Or just stones. So my neighbor, he's 88 years old, and he told me that back in the day, they just did it with 2 stones. They'd rub the wheat together like that, and then they would just eat it. Yeah, that was completely normal back then. Yeah, well, back then, there weren't these mills yet, or there were large stone mills, but there were also difficult times. You couldn't use them because you couldn't get to them, and so they just did it that way. Because honestly, with the current prices, I would really recommend having a stockpile like that. Yeah, because it's really, as I said, even if you pay triple, it's a steal, yeah. And it lasts forever, even up to 10 years. And if you perhaps already have something like that, because there are surely some of you who already handle it that way yourselves, if you have experience with how long it has lasted for you. I know it's been a few years, and it's never taken longer than that for me. I'd be interested to know if anyone has, yes, 10 years or longer, which is what's said with proper storage. It's just wild when you have a sack like that and it lasts for 10 years. So all things considered, I'd say that's a good investment. Regardless, I mean, as a long-term investment, right? And especially right now with these prices. Yes, but otherwise you can just cook this wheat. Yes, you can simply cook it like rice and eat it. And if you don't have electricity, then you let it sprout. It sprouts in between 1 and 3 days, and then you even have the greens to go with it. That means, yes, you simply let it sprout, and then you have, so to speak, a fresh wheatgrass salad. And that naturally contains even more vital nutrients because you have all those healthy greens in there as well. Yes, so as I mentioned before, even without a mill, even if you say to yourself, okay, I'm actually not interested in that process at all, it's just not my thing. Yes, then you can just get yourself a sack, or at least some flour, of course, and you can then really get by quite well in an emergency situation. Because now I'll show you what that looks like, or what you can do with it for everyone who doesn't know it, because I didn't know it at all before. I mean, I grew up in a city, and yeah, things like that were really foreign to me. Yes, so I only saw here how wheat grows in the countryside and how it gets into the mill. And I really enjoy it too. So I really like using it to process things. For example, if we look at this right here, you can see this is a whole grain bread. Exactly, and that is why it is really quite amazing. Also, in terms of quality, there's nothing to say about it. It's just completely incomparable to anything else out there. It's so incredibly good. And if you then decide to add some grains or whatever, maybe some seeds or crunchy nuts, whatever you feel like or happen to have on hand, and not just in times of crisis, of course, because you can naturally make it a healthy lifestyle if you feel like it, then you can easily integrate it like that and always have those things at home, whenever you feel like it. This is just for those who say, oh, that would interest me and that would be fun for me. Exactly. Your sweet things here, just the same. I also make cakes with it. Here, take a look at this chocolate walnut cake. It is incredibly good. I mean, it is really, truly incredibly good, especially with this freshly ground grain. That is one thing I can highly recommend to you. It is just delicious. All right, but let's continue down the list now. So much for the flour. That is definitely very important. Next, we have oil here. Well, that's obvious anyway. You just have to see how much you need. I always get it here too, because I'm in southern Italy and the olive oil is freshly pressed right near me. And I always get 5-liter canisters, but I do that anyway, even without a crisis. And then I just get a few liters more than usual if you want to stock up a bit. But you can of course also get it at the supermarket or just any oil that suits you right now. Then salt. So salt is very important. Salt costs next to nothing. I think I don't know, it's 25 cents a kilo for me right now. Honestly, in times of crisis, salt is worth its weight in gold because just with salt and water, yes, just with these two products, so to speak, you can normally survive between 1 and 2 months, yes, without anything else if you are healthy. So I am talking about a healthy person. And honestly, that is just amazing, isn't it? I mean, we probably never really need that much time, but you really have to stop and imagine that for a moment. Even if you have nothing at all, even if you have zero and you only have salt and water, then you can get by with that for 1 to 2 months. So who is still worried about anything? Do you know what I mean? All this panic for what? It's really pointless because it's highly unlikely that it will ever come to that anyway. And if it does, you have more anyway. Then let's continue with natural seeds. And it is very important that they are natural seeds because when I first started with this whole process, I thought, oh, great, yes, I'll just take the eggplant from the supermarket and the vegetables there and the zucchini, and I'll just take the seeds out of them and dry them out. And I nicely planted everything the next year, and the plants came up, but to my surprise, not a single piece of actual vegetable grew from them. Then I really thought to myself, what on earth is going on here? Why isn't anything growing at all? I just assumed that I was probably doing something wrong. That was until I was informed that these seeds in the supermarket are simply manipulated because it is not desired that people reproduce these things themselves since they want to do business. And the seeds are probably all, or for the most part, simply dead and no longer germinate. And you just have to know that. Otherwise, you're just standing there thinking, yeah, great, where's my fruit? Where's my vegetables? And that's why I would recommend looking either in a garden center or sometimes they have them at hardware stores or just looking online to make sure you get natural seeds here. A few are enough. Yes, honestly, in an emergency, 2 things are enough because I always do 2 things and only 2 things, precisely because I simply don't have any more time. If I had more time, I would like to do more, but it's just not always possible. You can't do everything either. And that is precisely why I have gotten into the habit of growing 2 specific crops, 1 vegetable in the summer and 1 vegetable in the winter. And for the winter season, I chose endive because endive is excellently suited not just for eating as a fresh, crisp salad, but you can also fry it. Eat it with pasta, with rice, or even with eggs. It is truly incredibly versatile in stews, and it really adds a wonderful depth of flavor to so many dishes. So I eat it quite often because it's super healthy. It contains beneficial bitter compounds and provides valuable nutrients in general. And exactly, I'll show you a photo of it right now so you can see what I mean. I also do this in a pot because, as I said, I'm here for simplicity, also because of slugs, and then animals come by and it's just too much work otherwise, and it works wonderfully in a pot. That means you can just as easily do it out on the balcony or even on a small windowsill, just right outside the window, and it works perfectly. Well, they have gotten very big now. This is now exactly that monster endive, but it is already starting to flower here too. I let it get this big on purpose because I always just pick leaves off it and never harvest the whole thing. And it really was. Yeah, well, it was almost as tall as me. It came up to here. And these flowers here, that too, it was such a huge surprise that it produces such great flowers here. This endive lettuce, you have to imagine, this is an endive lettuce. If you just let it grow out, it produces seeds here. And then, exactly when everything is over, the flower falls off and the seeds are ripe. Then you just take the seeds and you have your seeds directly for the next winter. You can really get by with this all winter long. I don't eat it every day throughout the winter, of course, but they stand outside and you don't have to water them that often either. I'm here in Sicily, so probably more often, whereas if you're in Germany or further north, then even less. Exactly, and that's super practical. So it takes very little time and you always have something green at home, even when there isn't a crisis. And you can just choose for yourself whether you want to do that right now. Maybe put a few flower pots in there, put some seeds in, and just plant a few heads of endive. Then you've already got that at home, and then whatever happens, happens, and that's perfectly fine. Yes, you can get by wonderfully with that. So you can really do an incredible amount with it. And yes, I would highly recommend it. Yes, and in the summer, like right now, I always grow fresh basil, because it just grows so great for me every single time. If you happen to be somewhere colder, then you can, of course, also, I don't know, there's wild garlic, I think, and there are other similar things that also grow well in the north, although I think basil grows in the north too. If you have a nice sunny spot, maybe a south-facing balcony or a garden, or in the garden, then you pick the sunny spot. Yes, and basil is truly such a versatile all-rounder. Just take pesto, for example. I always freeze portions of it whenever the plant is producing those nice leaves. But I also pluck them off regularly. It also grows amazingly well, getting super big and bushy, provided that you just keep plucking the flowers and the leaves on a regular basis. I mean, honestly, from just 4 or 5 pots of basil, I can definitely get 100, if not 150 portions of fresh pesto in total. That is really quite a lot, and it honestly lasts forever in the fridge. And you can eat it with pasta, you can use it as a zesty salad dressing, you can put it on crusty bread with cheese, or you can even put it on top of a homemade pizza. I mean, I really do put it on absolutely everything, and it is just so incredibly delicious and so healthy for you. And that is exactly what goes into the seeds. I let it bloom at the very end, of course, when I finally say, okay, that is enough. Let us let it retire now. It has truly reached its age. Yes, then it looks like this. This picture was actually taken just a few weeks ago, and there is the beautiful butterfly right here. I just had to show you because it is truly amazing. It actually has these little hearts on its wings right here. So yeah, I thought it was super cute, and exactly, the basil is now in full bloom here, and I am just letting it finish flowering now, which is really lovely to see. I'm going to leave all the leaves that are still attached on the stems because I plan to hang the whole plant up to dry. That way, all the seeds will come out quite nicely, which I will naturally save to plant again next year. And those dried basil leaves, along with the flowers and everything else that was on the plant, because it contains an incredible amount of essential oils, which the leaves themselves don't really have. The flowers and what remains at the end are so intense, they smell incredibly strong, but interestingly, once it's fully dried, that intense scent fades away. Once dried, it becomes neutral, but all the nutrients are still in there, and you can really look up just how many incredibly important, healthy substances are contained in it. And I just dry that, pack it into bags, and that in turn goes into the bread here. Exactly. And it's totally neutral. You can't taste it at all, neither in savory nor sweet dishes. So it goes with everything. And you also have plenty of extra healthy things stored here, which is especially important to have on hand in an emergency situation anyway. So honestly, you really don't need to worry about these things anymore. Yes, and those were just 2 very simple, practical examples of how you can prepare yourself super easily and effectively, all while requiring very little time investment from your busy schedule. And of course, you can also use other seeds. And as I said, I always do everything in pots, only in pots. You don't need a garden, really not. It works wonderfully in pots, and that's why anyone can do it. A window with a windowsill is enough. Exactly. And of course, you choose for yourself what appeals to you most here and whether you want to do it at all, because you can also just swallow vitamin tablets if this isn't that interesting. We'll get to that now as well. Now let's open up the list here again. Exactly, we have the vitamin tablets down there. That's why I would definitely keep the seeds in the cupboard for an emergency. They last for 2 or 3 years, and even if you don't feel like dealing with them, you just swap them out every 2 or 3 years, but you always have something for an emergency. And in the meantime, you just take multivitamin tablets, but you have the seeds, because the seeds are so important, and I think, except for those who know, people don't pay attention to that. But if you don't know, like I used to, then you just don't know. You wouldn't even think of it somehow. And if you did, you'd go to the supermarket, but you can forget about that because nothing grows from those. So you can save yourself that experience. Exactly. And then we have a warm blanket here, but you'll probably have that at home anyway. At least I assume so, unless you live in the Sahara. And then bars of soap, a few bars of soap, because in an emergency, you can do anything with that. You can wash yourself or wash your laundry. You can also wash yourself with the soap. You can even wash dishes in an emergency with the soap. So a few bars of soap, and that's it. You don't really need anything else. Great, because nothing is likely to happen anyway. Ultimately, it really just comes down to staying calm, not getting caught up in that overwhelming wave of fear anymore, and certainly not having to let yourself be blackmailed by anyone. Because if they say, okay, then you're not allowed to do this or you're not allowed to do that, well, fine then. If that's the case, then I simply don't have to do it. And I honestly think it's really important that you have that option available to you. Yes, and now we come to water. Water is, of course, also very important, and there are some very simple solutions for that too, which we'll take a quick look at now. This would be exactly a do-it-yourself solution, which is a somewhat more hands-on approach. It is actually a super clever solution because he just has a simple plastic container up here. It could just as easily have been a flower pot, which is positioned to go a bit diagonally downwards. He then attached a pipe right here using some adhesive tape, and he has got a barrel placed down here. Now, whenever it rains, the water flows directly into it, and then you can just collect all that rainwater. You can then choose to fill it up or not, depending on the situation, and with that stored water, you can really do whatever you want with it. But in an emergency, you definitely won't have any problems here, especially if you live in the north, where it rains more often, and even here in the south, we use rainwater, but it is intended for emergencies anyway, and you can then see when it rains and then let it fill up or fill it into other containers. Exactly. And that way you will definitely have your emergency water supply right here. And that even works perfectly if we take a closer look at it now. Yes, it is really that simple, and anyone can build it for just a few euros. You just need a funnel or even an upside-down lampshade, a simple pipe, and then you just get some containers for the bottom to catch everything. Honestly, it's absolutely no problem at all, and you're completely safe. You simply have this precaution, this basic security measure in place, and then, of course, it also really depends on the local air quality and what the conditions are like exactly where you are. Here where I am, I don't need to worry about the rainwater at all. Exactly, I can use it normally for most things, although I don't drink it either, just to be on the safe side. I tend to use it for washing up and showering, but in an emergency, I could drink it without hesitation. However, if you live right next to an oil refinery, for example, or somewhere with a lot of exhaust fumes, then I would perhaps boil it in an emergency. Exactly. I think in the absolute worst case scenario, you can drink it too. You certainly won't die from it. But exactly, you could also try to boil it perhaps, or maybe even filter it out. I actually have a very close friend from Munich, an old friend of mine who did exactly that. He built something quite similar, but he did it even more professionally. Yes, so it honestly looks really nice, and he actually uses it that way all the time too. He told me he saves enormous water bills that way. He uses it all the time. He even attached a tap down there and exactly laid pipes. I don't know. He just did it really nicely. He took real time for it. And now he actually uses it for water consumption in his own apartment and saves on water costs that way. You can certainly do it that way too. There are definitely many different possibilities, and it really always depends on just how much you actually want to get involved with it. If you say, okay, for me, it's really just about being able to check this topic off, because it's not like you shouldn't be interested in these things or explore them further if you have the time. It's clear that you have to stay informed. Yes, that's logical. But jumping on the panic bandwagon, having to let yourself be blackmailed, and that whole routine, that really doesn't have to happen. There's no energy left for that now. We have to think about ourselves. We really have to make sure that we clear up our own personal affairs, and that is exactly what is coming up for many of us, or actually for all of us right now, because these are, in fact, the final things we need to address. Many people have been diligently working on themselves for many years, and they are now finally reaching those significant hurdles they need to overcome. Alternatively, they might be old souls who still have that one major thing left to do or resolve in their lives. And truly, everyone who is currently perceiving these intense energies is finding themselves in that exact phase of transformation right now. Yes, and unfortunately, it really won't get any easier in the near future either, simply because these are the truly massive hurdles we must face. Ultimately, that is precisely why we are all here today, to undergo this incredibly deep and necessary transformation right now and, so to speak, to finally crown our human existence and confidently enter a brand new, meaningful chapter. But it won't be easy. It is certainly not for nothing that people have been holding themselves up in the mountains for many years or retreating into quiet monasteries for millennia just to resolve their deepest personal issues, because quite frankly, it is never an easy thing to do. And many didn't even make it. Those people who you can read about again and again in ancient texts, but also in more recent books as the enlightened ones, well, they have always just been a very select few, haven't they? Because it is not easy. Otherwise there would be many more, but there aren't. They have been individual people. But that is exactly what is changing right now. That is exactly what must change now, because this new world will be a world of light, a world in which love prevails, in which trust prevails, in which understanding prevails, in which shadow aspects will no longer exist. It will be like becoming star people, and our physical bodies and energy will transform into pure star energy. There will be no more shadow aspects, and there will be no more darkness. We will truly be beings of light, so to speak, radiant human beings of light, and that transition won't be easy and such. Yes, and so everyone is encountering exactly what they need to encounter right now, precisely what they would rather not have to face, the worst torments, the worst pains, whether it be emotional or whether it be physical, whatever is coming up for you right now. It is going to be quite brutal simply because exactly what is perceived as the absolute worst is coming up for everyone right now. But for that very reason, we are now also looking deeply at our inner moon. Because by truly knowing our inner moon's movement in addition to the outer moon's cycle, we finally know exactly when the time has come when we might get thrown off track again, or perhaps when we are being thrown back into those difficult old patterns that we thought we had left behind for good. Because that is what it is ultimately about. We have our 8 time windows in the month. These are, so to speak, very precise dates, specific days of the month when the energies are particularly and quite strongly activated. And for some of us, or at least for those who are already actively participating in this process, these energies are activated on exactly these specific days. That means when my moon is activated now, my inner one, then I am sometimes really laid out flat, especially during the opposition on my opposition day. And when the outer moon is added to that as well, then I don't make any appointments at all anymore. I really don't do that anymore. I am laid out flat, definitely laid out flat. And that is how it is. I can say that now after many months. And so, on one hand, you start to recognize when you are being severely affected by these energy surges. This allows you to at least organize your daily life a bit better so that you can schedule your important appointments or tasks on other days. It helps because you still have about 22 other days available where things go better or where you simply do not notice the impact quite as intensely. But on the other hand, these are also exactly the time windows when you are much more vulnerable or perhaps much weaker. And it is during these moments that the underlying patterns become much more visible. And so I have finally tackled my last big topic, one that has truly accompanied me for many long months. And thanks to this astro detector back here, or perhaps the smaller one right here that we specifically use for the inner moon rounds, thanks to all of that, I have been able to successfully uncover this data. Yike. I have been carefully observing it, consistently tracking it for months on end, and now I can confidently say that I know exactly when these specific patterns repeat. And the last time, my last big topic, I knew exactly I was 3 days. For 3 days I knew, now I'm going to be extremely weak. But if I truly want to make real progress there, if I finally want to overcome this deep-seated weakness, this recurring pattern, or even this past trauma, one can really say, I have to stay like this for these 3 days so that I don't fall back into my old ways again. And once you have finally figured that out, your personal cycle, your specific 8 days a month, and exactly how they interlock with the following month, you will know for certain, oh, in these particular days, the same thing always happens to me. In these 3 days, I must not become weak again. I must remain truly steadfast. I must not give in to those old habits again, or whatever it may be for you. Everyone has their own unique issues to face, and that, my friends, is precisely what we call the inner moon. The inner moon makes your own issues visible, and the outer moon, that's what we discuss together, just like now. Those are collective issues like fear right now, fear about basic security that affects us all. Exactly, but there are also the individual issues that are running in parallel to that as well. And let's assume you are perhaps the more anxious type who always worries and maybe also assigns blame, then of course that could come up much more strongly now with the inner moon, especially if something is also activated at the same time. In any case, it continues like this now. For those of you who are already participating, you know this. We are now entering the moon positions for the coming month into our horoscopes. We do this so that we can find out these 8 days for each of us and exactly when they occur. Then we know when we are particularly sensitive to them. And of course, we become much more aware of the general energies that are constantly bombarding us from all directions every single day. And for those who are new, you are, of course, welcome to keep watching to see how it works to enter your own inner moon into the horoscopes, or you can also feel free to check out the quick start guide below. There is also a quick start guide where I essentially explain the moon code and what it's all about. And even if you have never heard anything about astrology, join in. That doesn't matter at all. It might even be better because some things have been corrected as they were not passed down correctly from antiquity, meaning that in the end, they were not actually mathematically correct. And that means you don't even have to bother learning incorrect things in some cases, but rather you can start off completely clean right away, mathematically clean, geometrically clean, and honestly, it really is just child's play to pick up. It makes the whole process so much smoother. So there is nothing difficult about it. You just have to really take the time to understand how the moon code works, what exactly a minimum of the horoscope is, and how to read it all properly. But there is also a whole course where I explain everything in great detail. So the quick start is just so that you can jump right in and get an initial idea, but above all, so you can start observing your days with it. That is really what it is all about. If you go ahead and do the quick start, you can immediately start observing your days and know exactly when your 8 days are active, and you can look at the rest later on. I would definitely recommend that to you because these are topics that also affect us and it is good to know. So it is definitely not useless knowledge just to fill your brain with something extra. That's not what it is. These are valuable things and years of research, 15 years of research that are in there exactly, but packed together in a totally essential way in the quick start so that you can start right away. And for all of you who have been with us for quite a while now, you know that I create the melody, which also hides the very same mathematics as in the 8 days that we are currently figuring out for the coming month. It is truly fascinating how these patterns align. So, the very same mathematics that is used in the method for the astro detector, specifically within our intervals, which is how we calculate our 8 days, well, that exact same mathematics is also found in the aspect melody that I have started playing at the end of every video now. Only someone just told me that they always forget it at the end. So he noticed recently that he hasn't watched it a single time because at the end, well, he just switches off when he knows it's almost over. Yes, and that's why I'm doing it now, because the videos are much longer now, since we always have the outer moon at the beginning and then move on to the inner moon. And everyone who is new, yes, everyone can join in and watch the outer moon. And those who are inside, who are part of the inner circle, they then join in with the inner moon. And in between, there is now always the aspect melody, because that's like a break. And some might watch the second part on a different day. But that is truly how you hear them, because it is so important. And in that way, our heart can also fully understand. And it is incredibly important because in addition to knowing the specific days when things affect us, when everything is activated, especially for us, we then also have our intuition ready to go. That works quietly in the background. It's enough to just listen to the aspect melody here regularly, and then it just works in everyday life. You just know it then. You have those sudden aha moments, and that is exactly what is hidden in this melody, the very same underlying mathematics. That is precisely why it exists now. And after that, we will continue right away with the inner moon and plot the moon's exact position into our horoscopes. Then everyone is going to need their freshly printed horoscope ready to go. And next, we'll carefully punch our little hole right here in the center beforehand, just so that we can easily mount the astro detector onto it a bit later on. If you are coming directly from the quick start guide and are brand new to this, then you can, of course, just place it on top for now. In the meantime, when you have a chance, I highly recommend that you watch episode 4 of the course, where I explain exactly how to attach it easily, quickly, and effectively every single time. Then I always do it like this. I turn it over once and apply a little bit of tape on the back just to make sure that it stays much more secure. But you don't have to do that. But I like it to be stable. Next, go ahead and place an eraser or a cork directly underneath the center point where we are going to poke the little hole. Once that is set, take a small earring stud or a sharp thumbtack and carefully use it to poke the hole right through the exact center of the material. And that's all there is to it. By doing that, we've prepared our horoscope for the astro detector, because afterwards it's just simply plugged back in again. So in the end, it's a matter of just a few seconds. Now, I am going to dictate the moon's position for you continuously as we move forward. We have identified the very first position in our brand new cycle occurring on August 23rd. And specifically, that position is located at exactly 1 degree within the sign of Capricorn. On August 23rd. We always make sure to write the specific date directly above it, just so we know exactly when that moment is. That would be 2 a.m. in Central Europe, and then 2 p.m. in Central Europe would be right here at 7 degrees in Capricorn. It is important to keep track of these precise alignments. Then it continues with 13 degrees in Capricorn. On the 24th August. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we find it positioned here at 19 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. And then the next position is at 25 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. It happened on August 25th. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we are here at 1 degree in the sign of Aquarius. And then the next position is found at 7 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. On the 26th August. At exactly 2 p.m. this afternoon, the reading here is currently at 13.5 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. Then the next position is located at exactly 20 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. On August 27th, August. And then at 2 p.m. sharp, it is positioned right here at 26 degrees in the sign of Aquarius. The next position we are looking for is at 2 degrees in the sign of Pisces. On August 28th, August. At 2 p.m. sharp, it is sitting at 8.5 degrees in the sign of Pisces. The following position is at 15 degrees within Pisces. On August 29th, August. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it is currently sitting here at 21.5 degrees. The next position we are looking at is located exactly at 28 degrees in the sign of Pisces. On August 30th, August. And here it is, occurring at 2 p.m., positioned right at 5 degrees in the sign of Aries. The next position is located at 12 degrees within the sign of Aries. On August 31st, August. And at 2 p.m. it is positioned at 18.5 degrees in the sign of Aries. The next position is located at exactly 25 degrees in the sign of Aries. September 1st, September. And at exactly 2 p.m. it is at 2 degrees in the sign of Taurus, The next position, as we can see, is located at 9 degrees in Taurus. On September 2nd, And here we have the time at 2 p.m. with the Sun at 16 degrees in Taurus. The next position we are looking for is at 23 degrees in Taurus. On September 3rd, And then right at 2 p.m. sharp, we are going to have it all ready for you right here in Gemini. The next position is located at 7 degrees within the constellation of Gemini. On September 4th, And at 2 in the afternoon, it is currently at 14 degrees in Gemini. The next position we are looking at is at 21 degrees in the sign of Gemini. On September 5th. And then, looking at 2 p.m., we have it right here at 28 degrees in Gemini. Then it continues on with 5 degrees in the sign of Cancer. On September 6th. And then at 2 p.m. sharp, we have it positioned here at 12.5 degrees in Cancer. And then we have 20 degrees in Cancer. On September 7th. And then at 2 p.m. we have it here at 27 degrees in the sign of Cancer. The next position, as we can see, is at 4 degrees in Leo. On September 8th. And at 2 in the afternoon, it is currently here at 11 degrees in Leo. The next position is located at 18 degrees in the sign of Leo. On September 9th, September. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the animal is at 25 degrees in Leo. The next position is located at 2 degrees in Virgo. On September 10th, September. And then at 2 p.m. it is positioned at 9 degrees in Virgo. The next position is at 16 degrees in the sign of Virgo. On September 11th, September. And then at 2 p.m. it is positioned here at 23 degrees in Virgo. And then it continues on with 0 degrees in Libra. On September 12th, September. And at 2 p.m. it is located here at 6.5 degrees in the sign of Libra. And then we have 13 degrees in the sign of Libra. On September 13th, September. And at exactly 2 p.m. it is here at 19.5 degrees in Libra. Moving on, we then have 26 degrees in Libra. On September 14th. And at 2 p.m. it is at 2.5 degrees in the sign of Scorpio. Then it continues with 9 degrees in Scorpio. On September 15th, September. And at 2 p.m. it is currently at 15 degrees in Scorpio. Then we have 21 degrees in Scorpio. on September 16th, September. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it is 27 degrees in Scorpio. Then we are at 3 degrees in Sagittarius. On Sep 17th, September. And at 2 p.m., it is at 9 degrees in Sagittarius. And then moving forward, we have 15 degrees in Sagittarius. On September 18th, September. It is currently 2 p.m. and the temperature here is 21 degrees in Sagittarius. And finally, our last position for this cycle is at 27 degrees in the sign of Sagittarius. On September 19th, September. Now we will also enter the moon phases here, starting on August 28th with the full moon, which we discussed earlier. August with the full moon, which we had discussed before. We are going to place the full moon symbol right here, and then let's go ahead and copy it in here as well. Exactly, we can check later, or everyone can check for themselves later, whether they are also affected by the inner moon here, because for me that was actually the case last month on July 29th. I actually had the opposition occurring at the same time as the full moon, that specific moon opposition. Yes, and it was so incredibly intense that I was really just laid out flat for almost the whole day. It was really severe, and I've noticed that quite often already. So that is exactly why you can observe it so wonderfully there. I have decided I will definitely take some time off from now on. Well, as long as the energies are this intense, I won't anymore. Yeah, because it just gets really annoying then. Then you might as well just stay in bed, so to speak, and simply allow all those healing energies to work on you and help you recover and heal. All right, then let's continue looking here with the waning moon, which would be here on September 4th. And then we turn our attention to September 4th. Next, we'll go ahead and copy the symbol from this spot. And once we've done that, we'll be sure to have that information as well. Then it continues on September 11th. September would then be the new moon. And finally on the 18th. Next comes the bright waxing moon. And you can, of course, also take the time to note down all the other important dates as well. Because that is really nothing other than us having the full moon right here, while over here we have the new moon. These are our waning and waxing moon phases. And then we have just the other two states of the moon, which really describe how it is positioned relative to the sun in our sky. And I have also written those in the table of contents, or rather, I always post those on Facebook or social media in general now. Exactly, then you know which days those are and can always easily compare them as well. Now let's take a closer look at exactly which days and during which specific time intervals our aspects here are active. To do this, we first need to place the astro detector back onto the horoscope, or you can simply place it directly in the center. Please make sure it is always positioned in the center and keep it there until you have fully attached it to the chart. For that, you actually just need an earring or a thumbtack and just make a hole. Done. That's all there is to it. And it's definitely recommended because it's always centered that way. You don't have to check it every time. It works without it, of course, but it is recommended and it lasts forever. I mean, I've been using mine for over a year now. For me, I just have to keep referring back to the previous horoscope because it's entirely possible that it's split into two separate horoscopes. Since you can never really make it exactly the same for everyone on the same day, that means my conjunction starts in the previous month and then it continues with the sextile with the one we marked today. It's a bit of a complex process to follow. That's why I'm pulling up the one from last month, or actually the current one right now, because that one doesn't start until next week. That means this one here is still current. We're using that one right now too. And I'm looking at the conjunction there. For me, it's here on August 20th. That means I know for a fact that my energy window is open right here. I receive those energies much more strongly in this space, and the patterns also become much clearer and easier for me to see. That's why we note down exactly these 8-time windows, because that's what it's ultimately about, that things become visible within these 8-time windows. I also explained that in the Moon Code episode. The second part, in the quick start, that is mathematically supported, it is subject to natural laws that are objective, which can be observed everywhere. So it has a basis, it has a foundation. So for me, my conjunction is right here because I keep the conjunction line, that 0-degree line, directly on my moon. You are, of course, doing the exact same thing right now. Take your horoscope, either the current one or the last one, depending on the date, to ensure it flows continuously from last month. If you are new here, it really doesn't matter. Then you just start right here, and exactly, you want to see when your conjunction is active here, right where your moon is. Now, go ahead and aim that conjunction line exactly at your moon, and then take a close look at what date we have just entered here. For me, personally, that would be the 20th here. It is August, and specifically exactly 1 degree further, and 1 degree is equivalent to about 2 hours of time. And that is precisely why we know that for me, it is at 4 a.m. in the morning, because here we always have 2 a.m. at night and then 2 p.m. in the afternoon. There is always a consistent 12-hour difference between those two times. And for me, since there is a 1 degree difference, we have 4 a.m. here. So I am going to go ahead and enter that item into my master list right now. My conjunction event is officially active starting on August 20th, specifically occurring at 4 a.m. sharp. And here you can, of course, also have subcodes. I explain that in the second part of the quick start, or also in the course, episode 24, the Moon Code. Exactly. That is, if you want to observe it even further, but it is not absolutely necessary, really not. That is just what hidden connections lie underneath. But you experience them at the same time anyway. So you can take a closer look at that if you feel like it. But what's important is to know the whole conjunction, exactly where the moon is, on which day, at what time. And now we'll continue. Now we want to know the second day, the second time window, when the energies come through particularly well here. And now I am taking the new horoscope because it is already the new date here. So I am drawing my conjunction line over to the moon once again, just to see where everything aligns. And if we are looking here at what is currently in sextile, that is the sextile here. It goes to the left, and the first sextile is the plus sextile, the second one here in the list. And now let's see, what exactly do we have here? Here we have the 25th. For me, it is August, and that position is exactly 2 degrees away from the line, specifically the 2 a.m. line. So looking at this, we have 6 a.m. here, assuming that each single degree represents 2 hours of time. Therefore, I can determine quite simply and very quickly now that on the 25th of August, my sextile is officially active, and it is happening specifically at 6 a.m. That naturally applies for many hours before and after. That is just the exact connection we are looking at right here. It is clear that it is best to observe this throughout the whole day, because it can, of course, also make itself felt hours before and after. This is just the exact connection here. Now we simply continue looking at the square, which would be the third time window in our list here. And now we look. It is the 27th of August for me, and we are 1 degree further along than the daytime line. So for my location, it is now 4 p.m. This is because that 1 degree is exactly what the astro detector with the square line here shows. It is 1 degree further away. Good. So I know that on the 27th, we are set. August. At 4 p.m. in the afternoon, my square is active, and following the exact same principle, you now look, or everyone looks for themselves, to see when the trine is active. You can check the date up here, and then see what time it is by simply adding or subtracting the hours, depending on exactly how many degrees of difference there are here in this specific chart for you to see. For me, that would be a 4-degree difference here, as we can clearly see, which translates to about 8 hours. So we simply calculate 2 a.m. plus those 8 hours, which brings us to 10 a.m. here. Therefore, on August 30th at 10 a.m., my trine is officially active, so I will make sure to note that down right away. That is August 30th at 10 a.m. sharp. And that is exactly how you continue now. Then we have the opposition here. Then we have the minus trine in the list, also with minus trine, minus square, minus sextile, and those are our 8 days. And then in the next video, we'll start right away with the next round. And those are the 8 days that need to be observed also from an energetic perspective. These are the days when you are truly most receptive, be it to the various energies that are currently hitting us, or also to the subtle patterns that emerge. You can observe it so well here, where one just keeps going in circles, where one sometimes just doesn't get out for a whole lifetime, simply because it's not possible to be fully conscious 24 hours a day. But these specific time spans here, those few hours or even just a single day, that is doable, and that is something you can observe for yourself. That naturally stands out to you, especially because it is really precise down to the exact time. Exactly. And that is how it works in the next moon position in a sign video, which is expected to be released on September 13th, September. We are going to draw the moon's position together, starting from September 19th all the way through to the 16th of October, mapping it directly into our horoscopes. Yes, and now we have the aspect melody returning once again because, as they say, double is always better. Exactly, and I would say, until we see you in the next episode, all the best until then. Bye-bye.